Well, if you're in a busy season, you're not alone. Busyness happens. And we're going to learn about someone who is busy today. So we're in Luke 10. If you want to follow along, Luke 10, verse 38 is where I'm going to start. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they're still on the way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught, but Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken from her." That's it. It's our little story. How many of you relate to this story? There's like, "But Lord, I've got so much to do." You don't understand. And he's like, "Yeah, I understand." Let's remember our context. We've been in Luke. We've been traveling with Jesus. He is on his way to Jerusalem, but we've been meeting people. And last week we met an expert in the law who was talking with Jesus about the most important commandments and whether he was keeping them or not, right? And so Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan. What does it look like to be a good neighbor? And then he says, go and do the same. We're in this line of thinking. I want to continue the thought because we have a little different story today. But we still have that question in our mind. What is the important thing to do? Who is our neighbor? How do we know if we're doing this right? Because the man last week, he knew the way. He knew the words at least. He knew the scriptures. He knew the law, and him and Jesus were in agreement, but yet he missed how to do it. He missed the neighbor, learning from his neighbors. So today we have two women here in the story. We have Martha. We'll start with Martha. We relate to Martha, I think. You ever felt that where you're busy doing all the stuff and someone else isn't? My kids can relate. If we're going to clean up the house, everybody's going to clean up the house, right? And if you're not, someone will notice. Hey, they're not helping, right? And here's Martha. Like, hey, she needs to help. I'm preparing this big meal. She's concerned about the big dinner she was preparing, is what it says. And so we have a different character. This is different than the expert in the law who is trying to justify himself. We have Martha who is distracted by the big dinner she was preparing and concerned about all these details, Jesus says. It's kind of an interesting thing because he's actually showing the expert in the law, you might need to do more things. When you see the person that's been hurt, you might need to stop. The Samaritan stopped. The Samaritan took him to the place to stay and bandaged his wounds and gave him some money. Like, he did things, right? Well, here's Martha doing things. And Jesus says, wait. You don't have to be worried about all this right now. And I think that's an interesting parallel because we want to learn between both of these stories how to do this thing called follow Jesus. What does Jesus want from us? Martha is certainly doing things, and she's doing good things, by the way. I'm not here to beat up on Martha. It is very appropriate to have hospitality, and in that culture, it was paramount. If someone came to your home, you take care of them, right? If you welcome them into your home, you find some food, you do things for them. And so she is appropriate in what she's doing. So she's not trying to justify herself. She's not in sin. She's distracted. She's distracted from something. Now, this word is an interesting word. In the Greek connotation, it means dragged away from or pulled apart. Distracted. Have you ever felt this? It's not just that she got lost in what she was doing. She had a lot on her mind. Maybe, but I want you to see this, that there's more going on than simply she got busy. She's being dragged away. She's being pulled apart. There's a connotation of something is pulling her away. Many of us raise our hand, we're busy. And sometimes we make excuses for that, right? That's just life. That's life in America. That's life. I've got to go to work. I got to have kids. I got to do all the things. I got things to keep up with, and it's true. Me too. But what if those excuses blind us to the fact that something is trying to pull us away from the better thing? Something is trying to pull us apart. Something is pressuring us. We have an enemy that wants us to be distracted. This is what I'm trying to get at. We may have an enemy that it wants us to be so busy that we miss the important things. I picture it like riding a bike, because we're on this path, we're doing this thing, we're going somewhere. But when you're on a bike, you can't just coast for very long. If you're going through life and you're just coasting through life, it doesn't take long, and you're veered off in a ditch. You've lost all your momentum. You're stuck. You have to keep pedaling, right? You got to keep at it. You got to keep steering. You got to keep your hands on the handlebar. Where are you going? If we just leave it to coasting and we'll just go wherever the wind guides us, we may end up pulled apart. We may end up distracted. And I think this happens a lot in our culture, especially because we have all these things that are wanting our attention. We know it. You really have to guard yourself against all these things. The things of the world. Stephanie and I have been talking about this, I think it's harder than ever. I don't think a lot of things are new, but we certainly have a lot of new ways to get distracted. We carry them around in our pockets. We put them on our wrist. We have them everywhere in our home. All kinds of ways to get distracted. And they're not necessarily bad things, but they're pulling at us, dragging us. But I don't want to be hard on Martha. I don't think Jesus is being hard on Martha. It's not like the Pharisees where he's, woe on you, right? He's not rebuking her. He's tender with her. Some of your translations will say, Martha, Martha. This one was, what did it say? Dear Martha, my dear Martha. He's being very gentle and kind. He's not upset, but he's redirecting. My dear Martha, there's something more you're missing. And I think he speaks to us like that, if we'll listen. Sometimes we're so distracted, he may have to talk a little louder. I remember, I had forgotten about this. I remember when I was a kid, my parents once in a while, hi, if you're watching, they do watch sometimes. But they'd snap their fingers. And I knew the snap. Right? I mean, your parents may have had this. There was a certain thing they could do, and you knew. That was the warning sound. Sometimes the Lord, he comes gentle. He comes to get our attention. He wants to get our attention. He wants to get us on track and make sure we're following him. He's very gentle with her. And then we have Mary. What is Mary doing? She's sitting at the Lord's feet. In the middle of the preparations, by the way, right? The context is there's work to be done, and Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet. And Jesus says, there's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. All of this is leading us to ask the question, what is the one thing? What is this better thing, this thing? With the Samaritan, it was different, right? It was something needed to be done. You need to not ignore what needed to be done, right? The expert in the law had a theology that allowed him to ignore something. Your neighbor is suffering. Don't ignore it. You need to do something. And here, there are things to be done, and Jesus says, choose the better thing. We have to wrestle with this. What is the one thing? What should we be concerned about? And to answer the question, we're going to take a road trip. Kind of like Ray Vanderlaan. We saw his video. We're going to take a road trip to Colossians, which is in the city of Colossae. Colossians is one of those books in the Bible. It's toward the end, where Paul is writing letters to churches. And so he wrote a letter to the church in Colossae called the Colossians. That's what we know it as. And there's some interesting things going on in this book that help us with the one thing. Paul is writing to them. Now, you have to remember, Colossae, it's up in like the Turkey area. It was part of the Roman Empire, very Greek, very Roman. It wasn't Jewish, Hebrew, Israel, right? It's not in Israel. It's up in Turkey, or what we would call Turkey. But it was part of, it was more Gentile is the word we would use, which just means not Jewish. And so they had all kinds of other thinking that was creeping into the church. Paul is writing them, and listen to this. This is toward the beginning in Colossians 1. Just listen to this, what he says. Paul says to them, he has brought you into his own presence, and you are holy and blameless as you stand before him without a single fault. But you must continue to believe this truth and stand firmly in it. Don't drift away from the assurance you've received when you've heard the good news. If you need a verse to meditate on this week, this is a good one. He has brought you into his presence, into his own presence. If you've said yes to Jesus, if you're following Jesus, this is you. He has brought you into his own presence, and it gets better, and you are holy and blameless as you stand before him without a single fault. Is that powerful? I read that verse, I was like, I may just have to stop right there. Paul is reminding them of the amazing truth and how good it is. The whole first chapter, he's going over how good it is. Jesus is above all those things. He is supreme. He is amazing. He has brought you into his own presence. He's declared you holy. He's declared you righteous and blameless. And he says, don't drift away, which is an interesting phrase. And it goes back, I was reading that they would use this in the Old Testament. It kind of meant don't move the boundary markers. Like if you were surveying a property and they put stones, to mark the corners. Drifting away has the same context as moving the boundary. Don't drift away. Don't move the boundary. Remember where you are and don't leave it. Live here. Live in this truth. Live knowing that you've been brought into the presence of God. Don't drift away from that. Don't move the boundary. You don't want to go somewhere else. You want to stay right there. Don't drift away from the assurance you received. Stand firm in it. And so Paul is going to go on and on. It's a great book to read because the church in Colossians has been influenced by all this Greek thinking. Think Greek philosophy, Plato, Socrates, all these different things, but they were mixing it all together. Here's what Paul says in Colossians 2. Don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies and high-sounding nonsense that come from human thinking and from the spiritual powers of this world. Don't get captured. Don't get pulled away. Don't get distracted. Don't drift. All of this is the same theme. Stand firm. Remember the one thing. The Colossians were mixing in. And Paul goes on. I'm not going to read it all. He goes on to talk about how They're adding in drinking and eating rules. We got to eat this and drink this and not this. They were adding in holidays and ceremonies and adding all these different things. Self-denial and worship of angels and weird stuff they were adding in. Finally, he gets to verse 20. He says, you have died with Christ, and he set you free from the spiritual powers of this world. So why do you keep on following the rules of this world, such as don't handle, don't touch, don't taste? Such rules are from mere human teachings about things that deteriorate as we use them. These rules may seem wise because they require strong devotion, pious self-denial, and severe bodily discipline, but they provide no help in conquering a person's evil desires. They don't help. All that extra stuff is just extra. It doesn't help. There's this sense that they were trying to add something to Jesus, what Jesus has already done. It was Jesus plus something, and they were distracted. Just like Martha, they had gotten distracted. They had gotten pulled away. It's like they were dragged into something else. And the whole book is about Paul trying to remind them. Remember, he has brought you into his own presence. Remember the gospel that you've learned, how you've been set free. And it's because of what he did on the cross. It's because of the grace that's been poured out. We don't do other things to earn that. We can't earn more forgiveness. We can't earn more love. They had gotten distracted. The Colossian error was people adding things as if Christ alone wasn't sufficient. As if Christ alone wasn't sufficient. The point here, one thing is necessary. One thing. And here's the kicker. You already have it. If you've said yes to Jesus, you already have it. It's like Martha being right there and Mary being right there. It's already in your house. You've already been brought into his own presence. Even though you still got a lot of growing to do, you got a lot of messes to clean up in your life, I'm sure. But when you say yes to Jesus, the door is open and you are invited in. And it's this crazy thing where he puts the riches of heaven in what the Bible calls clay jars. That's us. Cracked, earthen clay jars. And he puts heaven in that. He puts his divine nature in our bodies. Don't drift away. Stand firm in that. Remember who you are. Remember where you live now. You've got a new home. So the problem isn't about doing stuff, but it's about our heart. Surprise, surprise. What are we paying attention to? What has our attention? One of the readers I was looking at, he was talking about how Mary was sitting at his feet, but Mary could have been just as distracted. She could have been sitting there with her mind all aflutter about the bread that needed to be taken out of the oven, completely distracted. It's not about whether you're sitting there or you're standing over here, but who has your attention? What are you focused on? Are you listening? Remember, one of our themes here in Luke is, how are you hearing? Something had gotten Martha distracted from hearing, where Mary was paying attention, sitting at Jesus' feet. So, what is the opposite of being pulled apart? We don't want to be pulled apart. What do we want? We want to be brought together. We want to be attached, brought close. What's interesting, now I couldn't hardly believe this, but I did. I looked it up. Must be true. The word religion sometimes gets a bad rap. I hear the word religion and I kind of cringe, to be honest, even though I'm a pastor. Because so many things are done in the name of religion that make me cringe. It doesn't look like love of Jesus. Kind of looks like the opposite sometimes. But yet, the word religion actually comes from a Latin word. The Latin word, I'm going to share it. I know we have a few Latin people here. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Religare, which means reattach or bind together. The word religion means bring together, to reattach. So in its best use, the things that we do as part of our religious practice should help us attach to Jesus, right? If we're doing it well, it should help us connect with the Lord and not pull us apart. The problem is so often that religion has added things to Jesus. This is when religion goes wrong. And this is I always think of in Isaiah when Jesus or God is just condemning the Israelites. He's like, I don't even like your fast days. I don't care for all your rituals because your heart is far from me. The point is he wants our heart. He doesn't need our rituals and our stuff. He doesn't need us to do things for him. He wants our heart. And so the practices are all to help get the other stuff out of the way, to get us to focus on the Lord. So we take fasting is to help us to not be so reliant on food. We get reliant on God. We study the scripture so that we get our mind focused on the things of the Lord, to get the other things out of our mind. Maybe we'll do meditation to help us focus on him. All his practices, the goal should be to help us attach to God. But like everything, if we're not careful, it can become another thing on our busy list. And we're like, you turn on your Bible app and you're listening at 1.5 speed just to get it done for the day. I'm not sure that's what we want to do. That's kind of against the point. The practices are supposed to help us slow down, to make space for God in our life, to help us sit at his feet and listen. When religion is working well, that's what it does. It's a system. I've heard it described like a trellis to hold up a vine. It trains us to be good disciples. All of this made me think of preacher stories. You know what preacher stories are? You like that? Preacher stories. Preachers tell stories and you walk away going, I'm not sure that's really true. You ever hear this? Now, I really try hard to not do this. I really try to research things because I've walked away. I hear preachers say things and I'm like, boy. I mean, that made a great illustration, but I'm not sure. You know, we do this sometimes. And I'm saying all this because I'm going to do one of these. That's I had really had a good time with that. But I was reading about this, and I had to look it up, and I looked it up in several places. I think this is true, but I think this is fascinating. Some of you probably heard this. Some of you doctors in the room may have to correct me. But there's this part of our body that acts like glue. It's called laminin. It's a part of our cells that gives structure and strength. Without it, we'd kind of just fall apart. Every part of us has this thing in it. It holds everything together. And I think we have a picture of it. Can you put the picture up? This is what, I was like, really? It looks like a cross. There is something in our bodies that holds everything together, and it looks like a cross. That makes a great preacher story. Because in Colossians, Paul is talking to them, and he says, he, Jesus, existed before everything else, and he holds creation together. And there is something deep within ourselves to remind us of that. Jesus is the one thing that holds everything together. How do we make Jesus our one thing? I think that's the question here today. We read that story of Mary and Martha, and we're like, man, I want Jesus. Like, I would love to hear Jesus say, I've chosen the better thing. How wonderful would that be? How wonderful would it be to hear him say, oh, he's done the right thing, and it will not be taken from him. That's what I want Jesus to say about me. So the question is, what is the thing? How do we make Jesus our one thing? And so I've been wrestling with this. How do we focus on Jesus? How do we not to drift and stay attached? We have to give him our attention. Over and over, Luke is pointing to the fact that we need to pay attention to Jesus. He is the one thing worth our attention. I think of the Transfiguration when God says, this is my son, listen to him. And here is Mary listening to him. She's our example of doing what God says. Even the Samaritan, when the Samaritan stops to help the man who has been hurt, he's listening to Jesus. Paul goes on, and I'm not going to read it. I always picture Paul. I know that movie earlier showed him kind of like an old bald man, but I picture him like this. This is my picture of Paul. He's like a coach, and he's all up in your grill. He's like, don't forget. Don't drift away. Don't you know how good it is to follow Jesus? Finish the race well. And he goes on and on and on. And I hear him in Colossians 3. He has this whole thing, and he's like, don't forget you've been made new, and don't forget this, and you don't have to be like this anymore. And then finally at the end, he says, Christ is all that matters. He lives in all of us. Christ is the one thing. All that matters. How do we organize our life? Truth. I'm not going to say it's easy. I might even say it's harder than it's ever been. Because there's so many things in our culture working against it that want to keep us from just sitting at his feet. Christ is all that matters. He's welcomed us into his own presence. I want you to reflect on this. I've had different, I don't know about you, I've had different seasons in my life when I have to learn this lesson. It's kind of like the bike thing, you know. You think you're doing okay, and then you realize you got off in the brush or something once in a while. How did I end up over here? I can't even pedal. It's like working too hard. What am I doing? And you realize that, I got off on my own again, or I'm trying to do it the hard way. I'm trying to carry it all myself again. I'm trying to do it without Jesus again, or whatever it is. But Jesus is so kind, and he says, Peter, yeah, you did it again. Come on back. Come sit at my feet. Come learn one more time to just be with me. You don't have to do all the things, just be with me. I remember times in my life, I had a lot in my mind, and it was working against me. It was like self-sabotage, because my mind would not stop. And our pastor at the time, he would always use this phrase. He would say this all the time, that you have to grab hold of the Lord. It would just something you got to grab hold of his promises, and you got to grab hold of this, and he would say it all the time, and it went something about that connected deep in me. I mean, I remember my first blog. I tried to write a blog, and I titled it Grabbing Hold, because that's what my heart was. It's like, Lord, I want to grab hold. Help me. How do I grab hold of this one thing? How do I make sure I'm grabbing it? Sometimes we're kind of loose. We're like, yeah, I love Jesus. We'll do the Jesus thing. And we're just kind of loose with it. I think Paul is up in our grill, and he's like, you got to grab it. You can't be loose with it, or you'll end up in the sticks. You'll end up in the ditch again. There's too many forces that are trying to get you distracted. You got to grab hold. Huge part of my story. Doing some hard things. Because sometimes grabbing hold of Jesus means letting go of other things. Telling people your deep, dark secrets sometimes. Doing stuff that's hard, being vulnerable. But you get the one thing that's worth it all. When you realize that that one thing is the only thing, and all those other things are very poor replacements, it's very helpful. You get a taste, an encounter with Jesus that reminds you of how good it is. And you're like, why do I fill my life with all that other junk? Why don't I spend more time with the Lord? And why don't I do this more? It's so good when we do it. I know I read this one book. It's got a great title. It's called The One Thing. One Thing by Gary Keller. It's actually a business book. But he gets the point. He says, the main point of the book, I'm going to give it to you right here. What is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing that I can do that affects all the other things? And it's a great book because he's helping you do that in business, but I think you can go even deeper than that. What's the one thing? Sometimes we have all these things going in our life, and we have trouble over here, we have trouble over there. Trouble, I tell you. But there's one thing. Rather than addressing that and addressing that and addressing that, and it just wears us out. We've got too many fires to put out. Pay attention to the one thing that makes the most difference, and that is Jesus. Choose that one thing with tenacity. Get fired up about it. You can even get a little angry that all these other things are creeping in and pulling you away. Sometimes you got to get fired up. It takes some tenacity. It takes some courage and boldness to shut it down, to change your life, to decide enough is enough. I'm going to make Jesus the one thing. And this is my challenge to you today, is how do you make him the one thing? And what is the one thing that you can do? What's one change, one area of your life, one takeaway today? What is the Holy Spirit drawing out of this? If you're anything like me, I like to set goals, and I'll write 25 things. The perfect day, right? I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to fast. I'm going to run 3 miles. I'm going to, it's like everything one day. I'm going to get all my jobs done. I'm going to go on a date with my wife. We're going to do all that. Like, it's going to have everything one day. But the problem with that is we can't do it all. We'll fail pretty quick. Instead, I find it's better if I'm like, what's one change I can make in my life? But be very strategic about it. Sometimes we're like, well, I'm going to cut back on my hours, or I'm going to take a longer lunch break, and that's all good. But what if there's a bigger thing? To get our lives on the foundation of Jesus. When you go all the way to the bottom, where is the crack in the foundation? Where are you hanging off the fence and you're kind of leaning away? How can you grab hold? I'm going to invite the worship team to come out if they're around. There you are, Josiah. I think I'm going to share this. If you want to play a little something, that's fine. But I'm wrestling on scriptures. I wrestle on this all week, and there's this thing where you I know what it says, but Lord, what are you really saying? You try to get into what the Spirit, where is the oomph? Where's the Lord this is what I really want to do this week? And what came out of me was this. emotion related to why is it so hard for us to pay attention to the one thing? Because it's frustrating. Frustrating for me. I don't know about you. Why is it that the world has such a hold on me? Why is it it's so hard to get free? So anyway, I wrote this, and this will just be a reflection as we go into this song. If Jesus is our one thing, why does it seem like he's so often the last thing? Or the first thing to go if something else comes up? The thing that gets forgotten, left behind, edged out, quieted, and erased. Until years later, we wonder where Jesus went. If he's our main thing, why doesn't Jesus matter more in our families and our churches? We get bothered about so many other things. Does it bother us to get distracted? Does it bother us when we miss Jesus? Why is he so easy to forget? Perhaps we've never really met him. Perhaps we've never truly set our distractions down. How do we break free from a life of distraction if it's all we've ever known? How do we choose the one thing? At this point, is it like muscle memory, ruts in the brain that only know modes of busy and busier? Could Jesus really be that much better? Is Jesus just another thing? One more thing? No one needs more things, do they? But what if Jesus is the better thing? How would we know? How would we test? Could we choose? Could we change? Muscle memory is strong and our ruts are deep. Are we missing it? Missing him? Oh God, help us. Give us a taste of life with you at the center, a life where the burdens are lifted, and a life where peace reigns and rest is restful. A life where we have chosen the one thing and we have been chosen by the one. The beautiful life we want but can't seem to attain. The life we receive by giving up and letting go. God, help us. Give us a taste. May we choose you and keep choosing you. May we surrender and keep surrendering, discover and keep discovering today. Now, we choose you. Jesus, help us with the distractions. We're so distractible, pulled apart, dragged away, snatched up, hunted by life. Jesus, would you rescue us from the other things? Meet with us, encounter us. We seek you, we choose you now. In Jesus' name, amen.